Hi guys, this is Abhirubdha. I hope you're having a good time at the Pune International Lit Fest. Thank you Manjari Prabhu, thank you Suhail Mathur from the Book Bakers. Thank you for having us. Thank you Westland Books. I'm here to talk about Ghost Hunter Gaurav Tiwari, which is about Reverend Gaurav Tiwari, who was the pioneer of paranormal investigation in India. He founded Indian Paranormal Society in 2009. This is about the life and legacy of the man himself. It touches upon his mysterious death, but it's mostly about him and the wonderful work he did. And the most spine chilling cases of Indian Paranormal Society have been curated in this once in a blue moon tribute to horror. So I recommend you to read this book if you haven't yet. Have a good time at the Pune International Lit Fest. And thank you for having us. Thank you for watching us.
My name is Meghna from Indian Paranormal Society. First of all, I would like to thank the Pune International Literary Festival for honoring us and showcasing our book, Ghost Hunter Gaurav Tiwari, at the Literary Festival. I would like to take this opportunity to talk about what the book is about. It's about the pioneer of paranormal in India, Reverend Gaurav Tiwari. He brought paranormal in India in 2009 when he formed Indian Paranormal Society. And this book showcases his life, his legacy, how he became a believer from a non-believer, and some of the most intriguing cases that he's done in India and all over the world. So I would like to thank Indian Paranormal Society. Would like to thank Westland Publications for publishing this book. Our literary agent Suhail Mathur, along with his team, the Book Bakers Club. The Book Bakers, and of course Abhirubdhar, who has done a fantastic job of writing this book with us. If you have not already bought this book, please go ahead and buy it and read it. And if you have bought this book but it's lying on your desk, pick it up and start reading. This is one of the best books that you will ever read. And if you don't know things about Gaurav Tiwari, this is a book that you need to start reading. Thank you so much for making us a part of the Pune International Literary Festival. I wish you all the very luck there. Thank you.
Tiger, Tiger Burning Bright with Miss Ambika Aiyadurai, Mr. Babi Nobis, and Miss Tina Nobis. The discussion will be led by Miss Harini Nagendra. Ambika Aiyadurai is an assistant professor, anthropology in Indian Institute of Technology, Gandhinagar. She is an anthropologist of wildlife conservation with a special interest in human-animal relations and community-based conversation projects. Her ongoing and long-term research aims to understand how local and global forces shape human-animal relations. Her monograph, Tigers Are Our Brothers, Anthropology of Wildlife Conservation in Northeast India, published by Oxford University Press, UK, 2021. Babi Nobis. Over the last 30 years, Babi Nobis has explored the incredible wilderness of both the Indian and African wildlife reserves. His long-standing passion for wildlife, and the big cats in particular, resulted in an inspiring portfolio of photographs that eventually culminated in the publishing of his first pictorial, On Sapphire, The Tiger and the Baobab Tree. Babi is a founder member of WPSI, Wildlife Protection Society of India, whose main aim has been to draw focus to the ongoing daunting task of tackling India's wildlife crisis, in particular poaching and the illegal trade of India's wild tigers. Tina Nobis, an inherently creative person dabbling in different forms of art. Tina Nobis is a textile designer and ceramic sculptor. She spent her growing up years close to nature and had the privilege of playing with the tiger cubs as well as of being in close proximity with a pet tigress in her childhood. Passionate about being in the jungle, she has traveled extensively with her husband Babi to different wildlife areas around the world. Harini Nagendra is professor and lead Center for Climate Change and Sustainability at Azim Premji University. Over the past 25 years, she has been at the leading edge of research examining conservation in forests and cities of South Asia from the perspective of both landscape ecology and social justice. She is recipient of several research awards. She is the author of Nature in the City, Bengaluru in the Past, Present, and Future, and is a well known public speaker and writer on issues of urban sustainability in India. I request Ms. Harini Nagendra to lead the discussion.
Sure. A big thank you. I hope you can all hear me. A big thank you to Pune Lit Fest for organizing this. I think on behalf of India's conservation issues, we all thank you because it is time for issues of conservation, which are so important to India, to get mainstreamed, I think, into all our conversations around writing, around communication, and indeed into Lit Fest. So it's very nice to see that the Pune Lit Fest has this entire session on tigers. Personally, it's a delight to be here. I have not met either Ambika or Tina or Babi, and we're doing this virtually from 4 states across India. So I think it's also a tribute to the lockdown and the creativity of our capacity to cope with moving online, that actually these kinds of things are possible with a relatively low carbon footprint, which is also good for the tigers, of course. So that that we can be in these different places and still do this. And what the format we will follow is that so just for those of you who are dialing in as an audience, that for the next about 40 minutes or so, we will have a few I'll pose a few questions to the authors, and we will have this quick conversation roundtable. And then the last 15 minutes, we would have time to take questions from you. So please start posting in your questions online, and then we can make sure we take them in. And if a lot of questions come in, there's even a possibility that we can weave more questions in. So please do make this interactive. We would love to hear your comments and questions. This is from the audience. So I'll start with the fact that I was especially delighted when the organizers reached out to me, as well as the publishers of the books, because the conservation community in India is often extremely polarized, shall we say, between people who look at wildlife specific, people who look at human rights, people who look at indigenous communities. Then there is, government actors. Then there are private conservationists. So there is a number of groups in India. And having looked at conservation issues myself from 1992 or thereabouts, which is close, so we're getting close to 30 years of experience now. I think everyone in this group will agree with me that it is a very important issue, conservation in India, but it's an issue that we're not really able to take forward because each group has its different take on it. And of course, one hour session is not going to solve our problems, but I would like to hear from this this entire conversation that we have, how each of us have come to these problems. So that's, I guess, my first question. And maybe I'll pose it first to Babi, then to Tina, then to Ambika, in that order of how did you come to this fascination. So for Babi and Tina, I guess, how did you come to this issue of cats? What brought you to this? What brought you to do what you do? And then I will next ask you about the books. So please don't tell the audience so much about the books first, but I just want to know what brought you here. And Ambika, similarly, because you have a very interesting background of wildlife conservation and then moving to anthropology. So what brought you here? So could I start with Babi first?
Sure. Can you hear me?
Yes, very well.
Well, your question was why the fascination with great cats, right? With the big cats.
Yes, and also what brought you here? I think there are a lot of younger people listening to this who might think that they grew up in cities or may not have. So I just want to know how different people came to this journey so that they can also see if they have paths that can bring them similarly into these kinds of areas.
No, I grew up in a city. I grew up in Calcutta, but a lot of my childhood holidays, summer holidays in school, was spent up in Assam, where I am originally from. My parents were both from Assam, and I had the exposure to visit tea gardens and tiger reserves, etc., etc., and also the brilliant experience of running into a wild tiger at night when I was a youngster, maybe 11 years old or something like that, on foot, my mistake, of wandering around in the forest at night. But there it was, and because of that, I've had this fascination with the tiger. And of the four large great cats, the jaguar, the tiger, the lion, and the leopard, though we've been to the Amazon, I was never, I've not be, I never saw a jaguar over there at all, though we tried very hard.
In the wild,
So I
yes.
spent time photographing tigers, of course, in India and Nepal, and leopards in India, in Sri Lanka, and Africa, and lion in Africa. But my fascination has always been with primarily with the tiger and the leopard, which I find a very fascinating creature because of its ability to climb up and down trees, and is an elusive spotted cat, put it that way. So that's basically the rundown to my interest in tiger photography. And then in 1990, we were in Africa in the Mara and the Serengeti, and that exposure was the first time I'd been to Africa 30 years ago, and that I found fascinating. Ever since we've been back, well, ever so often, almost every year, into different parts, right from Botswana, Rwanda, Namibia, South Africa, Zambia, Zimbabwe, Kenya, Tanzania, 8 of these countries, photographing, spending time. That is,
If I could have a quick follow up, because 30 years is a long time to be doing this. How, and now I'm sure a lot of this is digital, but before, when you started, how it must have been a very different world and very difficult to take equipment, not so easy to get into the forest, move around. So how have things changed?
see, I stayed as long as I could with emulsion film. I was never keen not to go digital. Around 2008, I think, I was compelled to, not for anything else. The processing of film emulsion became harder and harder. But the primary difficulty in shooting emulsion, I'll give you an example actually what happened. I was in the emulsion days, I was photographing 2 bull hippos fighting. And whenever I bought emulsion film, I'd take, let's say, 30, 40 rolls with me. I'd take it out of the canister. I'd pick up the slack on the film, and I'd keep them. I could reload a film camera, which gives about 37, 38 exposures. I could reload it as fast as any human being in the world could do it. But it wasn't good enough for that interim period when hippos are fighting, and when you're changing over, even if you got 2 cameras, but you got different film speeds, you got different focal lengths and lenses. So, and that is the slack, that is where digital has come in. There are no gaps. It's continuous photography. But in emulsion, you're rapid firing when you're shooting. It takes no time to finish 37, 38 emulsion strips, 36 by 24 millimeter. So the changeover happened in the late 2008, 2007. And now the digital cameras, the high-end ones, are very refined. Though I mean, if you look at pictures, the softness in certain transparencies, digital is coming close, but digital hasn't surpassed the best low ISO films. ASA, the 50 ASA, Fuji Velvia, and film like that. They're coming close, but I'd still give emulsion a little more than digital today.
Thanks. I think this glimpse into long history of wildlife photography is fascinating. Tina, I'm sure you came in from a very different route. So could you tell the audience?
I grew up in a very small town. I grew up in Bhubaneswar, in a very small town. The years we were growing up, the biggest form of entertainment was to get into a car and go spotting for wildlife, whatever we could find, rabbits, deer, anything like that. That was the big thing. Playing with tiger cubs was really a privilege because it's a small town. You knew everybody. And we were right next to Nandankanan, which everybody I'm sure has heard of. It was one of the largest open air zoo kind of things. So whenever there were cubs born, that was what we were invited to go play with them. Parents knew the director there, so you went and you. So it became very part of growing up. Playing with tiger cubs. When is the next litter coming? This kind of thing. Also, this whole fact that I met Khairi, which was this pet tigress, brought up, and you went and you could sit with her in the same room and pat her. And how is it not possible to be fascinated by the tiger? I mean, really, it is the most royal. It is so obvious. I think most people would do that. I try and understand people who say who are bird watchers or who look at an otter, and of course, great respect for all wildlife, but the tiger is in another league. So and I am completely with my husband on that, and the cats for that matter. And you asked him a question about equipment. For years, I just tried to be his handy woman, help him carry, and he would never let anybody carry his lenses. Very quickly, we were in the Masai Mara, we were on a hot air balloon, and the balloon kind of crashed. Everyone hung onto the balloon for dear life. My husband was the only one who was hanging onto both his lenses like that, to hell with anything else. So that has been a great part of being with him. And then I started doing video photography. So, well, you said not to say, but that's what we have even tried to put in our book. So that's been my journey. And I'm very glad I met somebody like this who was completely, our first holiday after we got married was to Kana National Park, So that's how it has been.
That's great. That's great. And
I
Ambika,
want to add in one thing. And
yeah, sure.
the tiger is the ultimate superstar. He's the ultimate superstar. I mean, I've seen in India, in Madhya Pradesh and other places, you see the world coming in with their huge 600 millimeter lenses only for the tiger. You do not see that
The
in India.
ultimate superstar.
The fascination with the tiger is something unbelievable. So the magnificence of that big cat, of that great cat, is something that in your lifetime you have to see a big male
Even
cat.
even people who live in the jungles, when they see a tiger, the guides, the drivers, the locals, they stop. They stop, and there is admiration and awe. Even they,
That's
nobody can. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you've given me the perfect timing to also hand over to Ambika, because when you said the
Yes.
locals, I think her
Yes.
book is so much about local
Absolutely.
people living with the tiger as opposed to people who come to see the tiger who are in landscape which don't normally encounter the tiger. So I think this is a real interesting contrast. But before that, I will ask you, Ambika, what makes a someone trained in wildlife biology move to anthropology? Because to me, that is one of the most fascinating parts of your book. We rarely find people who do this journey. Again, I'm talking about camps of people, and we have different communities. And so your transition, what shaped this transition? And before that, again, as academics, you and I think see, if we're talking to an audience who doesn't understand really the difference between what is a wildlife conservationist and what an anthropologist is, if we could also do a little bit of an introduction to what these different communities are, why they're so disciplinary different, and why the transition you've done is so unusual in some sense. I can't hear you.
Can't hear you.
Ambika, I think you to unmute or something. No. Can
We
you
are
try
in
to
four
turn off your
different
mic
places.
and pull it out maybe? No. Can you try pulling out your mic from the computer and just speak directly into the computer? No, you'll have to. Have you pulled out the plug also, the connection?
I
No.
could hear her a little while ago.
Okay. Okay, I'm just trying to see if the audience can. Are there tech people here that can help us? Ambika, could you try dialing in from a different device maybe? Or logging out and restarting? Okay. Maybe while we get Tina and Bobby, would you like to tell us about the book while we're getting Ambika back?
Well, this is Barbie's second book, and I think she's back. Is she back? Go ahead. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Well, and can you hear me now?
Coming and going.
Yeah. Hi. Hi. Yeah. So I was, because the connection is very bad. I'm in Rohing, Arunachal Pradesh, and
We can hear you.
shall I continue?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Shall I continue?
Yes.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. No, I was telling that Arunachal Pradesh, I should give credit to my visit to Arunachal Pradesh, which was instrumental in changing my discipline. I came to Arunachal Pradesh not to study tigers, and so I came as a wildlife biologist. I think my interest in wildlife was from an academic point of view. From I did my bachelor's in zoology. I took a standard, nothing very fancy, science graduate, did zoology. And after that, my training in Wildlife Institute of India, and then subsequent visit doing a project on human-animal conflict in Arunachal Pradesh. So I came to Arunachal Pradesh to do a survey on human-animal conflict, and what I was doing is anthropology without getting trained in anthropology, and that side of working with people, understanding how communities live with animals was very fascinating. And I realized that as a formally trained wildlife biologist, I was not trained in social science. But when I was pushed to do a survey in Arunachal Pradesh, and I think my training in anthropology started before formal training in anthropology. The shift was mainly because of my work in Arunachal Pradesh, and tigers came into my. I never wanted to work on tigers, unlike fascinate. I was listening to Babi and Tina. I never wanted to work on tigers. I wanted to look at different groups of people who are interested in conservation, as Harini was mentioning. And during my visit to Arunachal Pradesh, people were talking about tiger cubs from the Bang Valley. I think the information from people got fascinated, me to study tigers, and not me as a person who was fascinated with the tigers. I look at the tiger issue in a very, not in a very romantic way, as as my colleagues here do that, because I because of my training, and then for me, tiger conservation, the actors who are involved in tiger conservation these are I'm asking very academic questions about what is happening in the name of tiger conservation. What are the approaches to tiger conservation, and that's what is about. And what Harini was asking is what is the main difference between the disciplinary approach. The main disciplinary approach would be as a wildlife conservationist or as a wildlife biologist. We are most interested to know the ecological aspects of the biological aspects of tigers. About tiger habitat, about tiger numbers, etc. As an anthropologist, I am actually moving away from tigers and also including people in it. As an anthropologist, I study human societies, and principally I'm looking at how do local communities understand tigers. Because as children, I always knew we know tigers as national animals. We have written a lot of essays in schools about write 10 lines about tigers, and we always write tiger is a national animal. When I was doing surveys in Arunachal Pradesh, people would always say tiger hamara bhai hai in Hindi, and that was very interesting. As nobody told that to me. So local understanding of how about the local ecosystem and landscape is very fascinating. And here,
Thanks.
people say that there are kin, there are sibling. So that is a very interesting relation which I thought should be explored, because otherwise tiger conservation from a science perspective, we don't have space to accommodate local perspectives, and that's what I'm trying to do in the book.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Can we have multiple
yeah,
perspectives about how do we understand tigers? Of course, tigers are a fascinating animal, superstars, but they're also super brothers, according to the Indo-Mishmi and the local community.
I think this is fascinating.
Local narratives
so,
are
yeah,
very
if I can
fascinating,
just
and I
step
thought
in
there
here
should be space for that.
Yeah.
Before these local narratives disappear from the memories, and so this is what I did in the book, bringing in local perspectives about human-animal
relationships. Absolutely. I think this is, so that's why to me, this is a very interesting panel that brings all of this together. So, yeah, if I can then quickly then, I think because we are at 2:15, I want to make sure I give both of you time to, all three of you time to talk about the book. I think this is very fascinating. So it's different perspectives, let's say superstars and super brothers. I think this is
that's a good title, I think. That's a great title.
Good title for the panel, exactly.
Great title. Yes.
Yeah. So thanks Ambika for this very fascinating description. And now if I can turn it over quickly to you both, Tina and Babi, to tell the audience about the book.
So our new book, Babi's new book, primarily, I have just written the text from, it's exactly the way I've seen it. The text is written the way I've seen it. And because I take videos, I've managed to put in some videos in the book. There are 20 videos that are extensions of the photographs. I'm going to quickly show you the book. We haven't had time to put in the slides, but this is the book. This is the book. And we have a foreword by Jonathan and Angela Scott, who are the big cat people from Africa. and also knows so much about the big cats. And the book is primarily on tigers, lions, um, leopards, and because Barbie's pet subject like that. I don't know if I can show you any of the pictures, but that is how the book looks in the beginning. And the pictures, if I may say so, have Bobby has been able to depict a lot of the action. He has an extremely keen eye, even though I have seen it at close hand, and he's able to catch the mood and the essence. So I think what he's really, or we are trying to convey is everybody knows the tiger, everybody sees the tiger, and today with so much information and National Geographic and Animal Planet and all these channels, it's really in your homes today. You don't have to get into a jeep out and go on a safari. But he's been able, so we would like you to see these animals through our eyes, I think through his eyes, and catch the essence of what it is, and the stories that follow it. Uh, I like the fact that she says tigers are our brothers, because there's been so much. We have tigers in mythology. We have tigers for years, everywhere, everywhere, and I think the forest people, as I see it, are have been the innocents. They're now being subjected to and impregnated with a lot of city life. It's not the old civilization, and that they were. I think it's a very interesting thing. I would like to hear from Ambika about how the whole Tiger Brothers story is patching up. But so, I mean, I don't know if I can show you. Bobby, would you like to add something about the book?
Well, the book has over 200 photographs, of which a number of them are sequence photographs of an activity like tiger cubs swimming in the water or lions fighting in South Africa. And Tina has been in the same vehicle as me, all 99.9% of these trips, and she's shot high definition video all through. So, if you're seeing, let's say, in Tadoba, tiger cubs playing in the water, I show you 6 stills, and she shows you the video through the QR code which is in the book. So it all comes to life. So what you're seeing on paper is on your phone, and it brings the book to life. I find that fascinating because I've never seen it in any other book anywhere in the world. So I think it's worth seeing because of the QR code, and Tina has written the text, which is fabulous. I would say so. It's a great read. Not only in this book, in the other book also, but in this book definitely too.
I'll show you one picture, I think, which is just quite fascinating. I don't know if anyone can see it, but these are like two gladiators the two tigers that are fighting. But I was not with Bobby at this time. I was making breakfast in our jungle. So
It's a
I have no
wonderful
way. Yeah. And like I said, I'm never happy, but I'm very jealous of a tiger sighting. Very, very jealous. Even today, it's never enough. It's never
Well,
enough. Wasn't I there? So,
Tina was with me for this particular sequence, but I was there with some friends, and my driver spotted this tiger about 80, 90 yards across a nalla, and he said it's one of the full-size patia cubs. About time for them to leave their mother. There was a male and a female. He says, wait, the male will come also. That was the female. So I reset my camera setting, expecting some action, because I know the mock fight. And sure enough, in 10 minutes' time, the male came flying out, and the female was prepared for that. And you see them up like boxers. The claws are out, mind you. The shot with the 600 prime lens. You can see the clarity, the claws picked up at 100 yards, say 80, 90 yards, whatever. And this whole thing, if you did not anticipate something like this is going to happen, you could never have frozen those pictures. The whole thing was over in 2 seconds. So you're expecting something to happen. The minute it happened, you rapid fire. It's so much as anticipation in photography, in tiger photography. What will they do next? You have no clue. So you've got to be you imagine if there's a leopard on a tree, you think he's going to move now. So you reset your time, your shutter speeds. It's all anticipation and luck. It's all luck. Two leaves blocking the eyes of an animal. You don't have a photograph. There's nothing you can do. You can't move your feet. That's why let's photography. long review.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think fascinating. I hope the organizers will put up. I think Tina had a YouTube link where you can see a couple of
Yeah,
short.
plenty. Yeah,
Yeah.
if you just go to Great Wild Cats, Born to be Free, which is the title, the pages have a QR code, but even then, it's all out on YouTube. So you can access the videos.
Yeah. And I'm hoping the organizers also will have links, of course, on where to get the books. But this
Yeah.
is a good time, but I want to make sure I hand over to Ambika also. Ambika, can you tell us about the book for the audiences? Again, we can't hear you.
I know how sad.
No,
We're very brave, Harini. We're doing this over 4 states.
I know, first it's and that to debunk, I'm sure connectivity
Right.
is not going to be easy. No. Well, maybe I'm sure she'll come back in a minute. So, yes, she's already coming back.
Can we hear her now? No.
Can you say something? Can you try again? No. I can see the book, but we can't hear you.
Oh.
Yeah. No. No. Unfortunately, not. Maybe Tina, if I can just ask you while Ambika is getting this set up. So, a follow-up question, Tina and Babi, what has been your experience with the audiences that resonate to this book? Because one part is, of course, you're showing this book, and I'm not talking about the wildlife photographers or wildlife enthusiasts who are looking at the book, which is
Right.
your natural audience who know about this. What has been your experience in converting the non-converted, so to speak, or to making people interested in the books?
Um, what I think what has been absolutely fabulous is the younger generation, which has just today I find that they go out, they spend the money. The book. Om is our publisher. We are very grateful that they published the book, and it's turned out beautifully. And I must say that the youngsters are also going out, spending their money, buying these books, and taking more and more holidays in wildlife, in national parks, more than going out to the cities. It's not only the pandemic that has made them want to go out to open areas, but they are very interested. A lot of it is, of course, all the information we get today. So, and people never realize. They think it's so simple. You go out there, you see an animal, you take a picture. The hours of waiting, being there, takes years to be in the right place, the right time, getting that picture. So people who don't know the jungle, don't understand it, don't see that. And of course, there are people who say, very nice book, look at the cover, turn one page and put it down. So it is still a very niche place. You have to be interested. It's not just something that looks good on your table. And yet there are people who have gone through every page, noticed every detail. I suppose it will still take some time. But yes, the youngsters, I find, are getting more and more interested, which is wonderful. So,
great. I was especially, for me, what struck, I can't remember the page, but one of the pages where you have a lizard with a mottled background.
That's
and,
right.
And,
He
and then,
actually, He was so beautiful, he accidentally made his way into this book. You know, the photographer wouldn't let anything, which didn't look like a big wild cat, to be in there. But he relented. He said, "Okay, you can have him. Give him a page," kind of thing. You know, it was a monitor lizard basking in the sun in Sri Lanka. Yes, and Yala
It gives you the sense that, you know, the forest is an ecosystem. There's everything, and the tiger is not going to thrive unless the rest of the forest.
No, not at all, not at all. But not at all. It is, you know, head of the chain, but definitely. And yes, because of the tiger, we have learned so much about the smaller things, the plants, the trees. You know, you sit there, you're looking, waiting for this big cat to arrive. Oh, even in Africa, there's so many different species you pick up on, you learn about. Fascinating trivia that you pick that you would never find in a textbook, that you find when you're on the field. You know, you want to tell them about the zebra?
About the
Zebra, how a zebra mother, I mean, it's how a zebra mother has a foal, and then she will take her foal away so that her stripes are imprinted on the foal's memory before she will bring him back into the herd. You know, there are so many different things. How all the impala will drop their babies just before the rain so they have enough food. I mean, it's you learn so much about so many different things because you're pursuing the big cat. You know, the royalty. So yes, and where since she's not on the screen, all the people, I would love to ask her that. Let's see if we can get her to speak before her line goes off.
Yeah. Ambika, you're back. Are you able to speak?
Yeah.
No. Unfortunately, not.
Unfortunate because there is a field of work that she's doing.
Yeah, it is a very fascinating book, and I wish that you could
Could
hear
do
from
that.
her. Hopefully, we
And
still
you
have
know,
5 minutes and we can still get her in.
we have a huge lobby of human rights and tribal rights activists who are so against what the Supreme Court said about removing all the villages and all from the jungles. And there's a huge lobby there. And there's a lot of us who are so insanely possessive about the wildlife. And we see that over generations, that the I don't like to use tribal, but let's say the indigenous people are not as um, they're now so impregnated with city people, and so they do have access to resources other than the traditional resources from in the jungle, and then they are also getting quite they used to be the custodians of the jungle and the tigers and all that, and now there's poaching, there's all this stuff that is happening. So I would have loved to have a long detailed listen to her point of view on this. I myself have very conflicting
Exactly.
opinions on things.
I think so. Maybe I will do a quick summary of the book since Ambika is unable to. So Ambika's book, which I think everybody should definitely read, is "Tigers Are Our Brothers," and it's a book which is published by Oxford University Press. It's based on Ambika's very detailed work with the Bangs in so let me just see if I can just read out. In fact,
Can you hear? Can you hear? Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you perfectly.
Can you
just
hear
in
me
time.
now?
Yes. So Ambika,
Hi,
the floor is yours.
No? Hi, Harini. Hi.
Yes.
I don't know what is the problem. I can hear you. I can hear you and I can see you all, but I'm not able to. You're not able to hear me. Don't know what is the problem. No.
Go ahead. If we can hear you.
Sorry. No. Please continue. Yeah. So,
No, go ahead, Ambika. We can hear you. Please talk.
now?
Yes.
Yeah, not able to hear you, Ambika. Sorry. Again, the connection is really bad. I'm wondering if I should just take over and just do a quick summary of the book. I obviously won't be able to do it the way you do it, but maybe I can just
Harini,
something for the
okay,
audience. Yeah.
okay.
So,
Book is based on the PhD anthropological work, and the book primarily life should be field, and I have done the entire field work in Dibang Valley and Bang Valley, a group of individuals called Idu Mishmis. In fact, I presented my book. We had a book discussion here with the Idu Mishmis, and we had a very interesting discussion. And the book tells us how different groups of actors at the center of the screen and look at how the state understands conservation and how the science and wildlife biologists understand conservation and how do indigenous groups see these animals. And what I found is I wanted to include the local indigenous part of any scientific management practices. And when people say that the kinship with animals, this is very fascinating. We all have human connections with
Oh,
yeah, so let me continue with this. So this is based on Ambika's long-term ethnographic PhD thesis research from the National University of Singapore, and she mainly worked in the Dibang Valley as well as other parts of Arunachal Pradesh, where the Idu Mishimi indigenous communities protect the tiger, but protect the tiger because they say the tiger is their brother. And so she starts with this whole discussion of how she went in to do some wildlife research and human animal conflict of the tribe with the tiger and with other wildlife researchers. And she saw that other wildlife researchers were being very hostile. They had to face hostile questioning from this indigenous community of why do you need to come and tell us that you need to protect the tiger, or tell us that if you don't protect the tiger, the deer will increase, therefore your agriculture will be overrun, etc. We've always protected the tiger. The tiger is our brother. And then she proceeds to do this very long discussion in after spending years in this landscape, talking about how the larger threats are something, and that I think is something which I think all of you will agree with, is the larger threats are something we should unite about. The larger threats are more like large dam construction, large roads and other infrastructure projects that cut through these protected areas, the overall growth of cities at the fringes of all our protected areas, the mining of these protected areas for coal, for different kinds of minerals, for gems in different parts of the world, not
of course,
necessarily
of course.
India, right? And when we stop and talk about resettlement of communities and expansions of protected areas, we're often losing a lot in terms of not uniting to tackle the larger threats, which is this larger development narrative that of course we need, but which really then destroys our the last few pockets where people and wildlife can actually live together. And in this context, I should say that one of the best places that I have seen, of course, in East Africa you have wonderful places where the Maasai are involved in community conservation, but
Yes.
there's also excellent work in Nepal at the fringes of the Chitwan National Park, where I
Yes.
have personally seen over 20 years of work how communities at the fringe of the Chitwan National Park actually have, in some sense, better wildlife sightings and better management of wildlife than areas within the park, even during the worst times of the Maoist insurgency and conflict, because communities were so closely involved with conservation and the economic benefits from that kind of tourism, right?
I think you're so right. I think what has happened to all our communities is that we are not giving them enough. And they're so poor, and so they depend on we just, and also what has been promised to them by state authorities and stuff they don't really get. So where are they going to go? If and we have so much. What I certainly don't agree on is there are far too many hotels and things like that are coming up in all these wildlife places. Too much. I mean, Corbett has weddings happening over there, things like that. So all these people who have made so much money because of the wildlife are not giving back to the community enough. If they give back to the local community, maybe they won't depend on the forest so much. Maybe they will not have to resort to hunting the prey base as much as they do, or giving into poaching deals or things like that. I just don't think that we need to really look at them, because they are the link. They are the link between all of us today and the forest, isn't it?
Absolutely. So we're now at the last 2 minutes. I'll just ask you both, maybe Babi and then Tina, any closing words?
Any?
Closing
Please
words.
repeat.
Any closing words? Since
Any
we're at the
closing
last minute.
I can only say, please look at this book, because it's a pictorial. It's fabulous. Even if you don't want to read about what tigers do and what conservation is all about, at least let the pictures inspire you. Let the pictures inspire you. Do what you can. Do what you can for nature. You'll help the environment. Reduce your carbon footprint. And please look at this book. It's a labor of love. There's lots of time and energy spent into it. I hope you appreciate it.
Great.
And go and see the most magnificent predator in the planet.
Right.
Go and
And
see it.
since Ambika is not here, go ahead, Babi. I don't want to cut you off.
Go ahead.
Sorry?
She's saying go ahead. You were saying something.
No, I was saying go and see the most magnificent predator on planet Earth.
Absolutely.
Right.
And while you're at it, I think also when we look at protected areas, I think it's what Ambika's book also tells us is we should also look at these as embedded in a forest where often indigenous communities live. And so
Yes.
one part of this is to get to know the indigenous communities that live with these and how do they interact with this wildlife.
Yes, and respect what we have, and especially in our country. Just respect, and for the younger generation more than anything else.
Absolutely. So
Thank
with that,
you.
thank you very much, Tina and Babi, and thank you so much, Ambika, for persisting despite the
Yes.
bad internet connection.
Yes.
It's really unfortunate that we couldn't hear more from her I urge you all to go out and get both of these fabulous books and read them and spread the word about this. They have very different perspectives into the large cat and all kinds of large cats in the case of Babi and Tina's book, but specifically the tiger in case of Ambika's, and both are really worth viewing, reading, and spending time with. Yeah. So with that, I'll thank the organizers very much, and I'll hand it over back to them.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Harini. Thank you, Pune International Literary Festival. Thank you for having us.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ambika Aiyadurai, Mr. Babi Nobis, Ms. Tina Nobis, and Ms. Harini Nagendra for being PILF guests. We will begin our next session after a short break of 15 minutes. Please join us for Successful Conversations Masterclass with Raju Parulekar at 3 p.m.